There's some debate about whether it's more efficient to use folders or tags to organize things like files and notes, tasks, and things like that. But I've been saving things in folders and subfolders for decades now, and my brain just works better that way than it does with tags. I like the idea of how some apps treat tags almost like folders, but I just can't get my head around finding things as quickly that way as I can when I look in folders. Reminders let you put lists inside of groups, which are basically folders, but it's limited to only one level. You can't put one group inside of another. Someone asked a question on my last video that got me thinking about why I have separate groups for some of the things that seemed like they could all be combined. So it got me thinking about how I organize my groups and what I could do to maybe optimize that a little bit. So in this video, I'm going to show you a solution that I came up with to work around that single level group limitation in reminders for a more effective list layout. If you've got a lot of groups and lists in reminders, this might be helpful for you too. Before I get into reminders, just to explain what I mean by nested folders, I'm in Notes here. So I've got my standard folder structure, but you can see a couple of them have the little chevron beside them. That means there's a subfolder inside of that folder. So in Notes, you can drag folders inside of other folders to get multiple levels. So let's say I want to drag one inside that second level and get a third level. You can keep going down, so you can fine tune just how things are filed within those folders. So switching over to reminders, reminders uses groups, not folders, but they're effectively the same thing. But in reminders, you can't drag one onto another to put it inside the folder. You see it, if I drag it here, nothing happens. It just flips back. The only thing you can do is drag it to reorder things and move it up or down, but you can't actually file it inside of another group. What I've done instead, as you can see here, I've got a personal section, I've got a work section, resources, and smart lists in this example here. These act like folders for me. So everything under personal, I've got all the groups that apply to the personal parent folder filed underneath it. Same for work and so on. But these folders are just there as a header, really. What these are really is empty groups. They're I'll explain in a minute here how to set these up, but they're basically a group that's created with a list in it, and then you just delete the list and it leaves the folder there as a header. So you can drag these around however you want to order things, and they'll just move like any other group does, but there's no actual lists inside. I like to use dashes or some sort of symbol that makes it clear it's a header. If you just name it like you do your other lists, it doesn't stand out the same way. So that's why I have these dashes in here in the name, but you can name it anything the same as you would with any other group. So let's look at how to create these groups. Before I get into it, let me just say now that I may refer to these as folders without realizing it. If I do say folders as I'm going through this process, I mean groups. And I'm using the Mac for this example, but I will switch over to the iPhone as well and explain how to do the same thing there. They can both do the same thing. The process to do it is just a little bit different. So I will go through it on both platforms. The catch to this is that you can't create an empty group. So you can't just create a group and give it a name to use as a divider. If you go up to the file menu here, new group is grayed out. It's not active. So there's no way to just create a new group. The way to get around that is you have to create a list and then add the list to a group to create a new group. There's two options. You can either do it with a list that you already have created. So in this case, I've got this tasks list here. So if I click on that and then go to the file menu and new group, I get the new group option here, and then I can name it whatever I want. Just give it a quick name. And then once that's created, you can take that list that's inside there and drag it back out again. And now you've got an empty group that's just there purely as a header, and you can drag that around within your list on the left and put it wherever makes sense. The other option is to create a new list. So you can either click on the Add a New List button up at the top here, or you can use the keyboard shortcut, which is Command-Shift-N. And then if you're just creating a temporary list, really, just to use it to create a group, you can just call it whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. You don't have to worry about any of the settings because it's only here purely to use as a way to create a group. So then once you have that new list created, File, again, New Group, and same thing. We can give it a name. And then once that's done, you can delete the list from inside the group, and that group, the empty group, stays. So once you have all your group, your header groups created that you want to use for your dividers here, you can just drag them into whatever order you want. On the iPhone, the process is a little different. There isn't an option to create a group from a single list on the iPhone the way there is on the Mac. So the difference here is you have to create two lists that you then drag one on top of the other to create a group on the iPhone. So to create a list, we're going to tap the Create a List icon up at the top, the middle icon on the toolbar at the top. And again, these lists are just temporary to set up the group. So you can call it whatever you want. It doesn't really matter what you do with it there. And then we just swipe back, create another list. So we have two. And then you just tap and hold on one and drag up on top of the other. And then it'll ask you for the group name. So again, you can call it whatever you want to call it. And then you now have that group in your list that you can use as a divider. And at this point, you can delete the lists that are in there. They don't need to stay once the group's created. They just need to be there to create the group in the first place. So to get rid of those lists, you just drag them to the left until the trash can icon comes up like that, and then that deletes them. And now you've got an empty group with nothing in it, and you can drag that up and put it wherever you want in the list. You just tap and hold for a second until you get the menu, and then if you start dragging, it'll take it wherever you want. So you can see I've got personal, work, resources, and smart lists. And then within each of those, there's different subgroups, like household. My projects are set up with separate lists for each project. I don't, at least for bigger projects, I create a list and all the tasks go in that list. I don't use tasks with subtasks the way that some people do, or the section dividers for groups. If you're interested in knowing more about why I have my setup the way it is, I did a recent video that goes into a bit of a deep dive on how to set up a reminders system similar to mine. So I'll link that in the description down below, and if you want to see how I've set this up and why. So that gives me effectively parent folders or headers, however you want to look at it, for each of the areas of my life. And then I can have groups underneath that with things that might have different projects set up in them, but they're all related. The other thing I like about having it structured this way is you can mix and match single lists and groups within each of these sections. So for example, I've got this tasks list up at the top, which is a single list on its own that's not inside of another group. If I wanted to have that in my personal list, I can just drag it down into that area, and it shows up under personal. So now everything in here is personal, but it can be a mix of individual lists and groups all in the same place. If you're familiar with the way OmniFocus does this, or the getting things done method, this tasks list for me is like a single actions list. Basically, it just has individual actions that aren't really part of a bigger project. They're just one-off things that I need to do for whatever it might be. And with this system, it gives you a little bit more flexibility within each area too, because I could have, say, a single tasks list for work. I could have another single tasks list for any other category that's in here. So this does give you a little bit more control over how all of the folders and lists the groups and the lists are structured, and you can get a little bit closer to what some of the other more complex task management systems can do. Once everything is organized, everything is easily accessible. I've got my today's dashboard focus that I use as my main working list. Again, this is explained in a recent video as well that's linked down below for the reminder setup. I've got my personal lists, I've got my individual tasks, the different projects I might have to do for the house, anything that's health related is in here. So these are all filed within groups within a master group. And I can have different projects. Say for my YouTube channel, I might have a list for each video that I'm planning, because they'll be at different stages. It might be just an idea, or it might be in research stage, whatever it might be. So I can have different lists for each of the projects I'm working on there, and so on through the list. I also use this to separate out my smart lists. I've got a couple of folders here with different smart list examples. I'm working on another video that I'm going to explain a lot more about how smart lists work, how to create them, and go through some of these examples. So if you'd like to learn more about how they work, or even just looking for ideas for more ways to use smart lists, I'm working on a video for that that'll be coming out shortly. Just make sure you're subscribed if you're interested in it, and keep an eye out for the next video. So as you can see, if you get a little bit creative, there are ways to do more with reminders than Apple might even have intended. There are still a couple of things that I'd like to see Apple add that other apps like Todoist and OmniFocus can do, particularly more powerful filtering for smart lists. But for the most part, Reminders does everything I need, and you can't beat the price if you're already in the Apple ecosystem. How about you? Have you found an interesting way to use Reminders, or do you have any questions about how to do something with it? If so, let me know in the comments down below. Thanks for watching. If you're new here, my name's John. I'm figuring out ways to simplify my productivity system, and I'm trying to use the stock apps as much as I can. I'm sharing what I learn along the way, and hopefully some of the things that I pick up will help you too. And if you're interested in seeing how to get a similar reminder setup to what you just saw in this video, check out my other recent video here. It goes through how to set things up step by step. I'll see you in the next one.